Welcome to the Femininja Project. I am your host, Cheryl Ilove, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the Femininja Project. Welcome to another episode of the Femininja Project, and thank you so much for being here and tuning in. I really appreciate you. And as you know by now, we are all about empowerment on the Femininja Project, and empowerment comes in a lot of different ways and affects a lot of different aspects of our lives. And one of them is about taking control of your life. And today's guest is going to talk about that. Her name is Dr. Sherry Price. She is a doctor of pharmacy. She's a life coach, founder and owner of DrinkLess Lifestyle. Instead of a 12-step program, Sherry created a 12-week program specifically for women, using neuroscience and the power of neuroplasticity to help women change their relationship with alcohol. And I am so excited to have her on the show. Sherry, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Cheryl. I appreciate this opportunity to chat with you.
I met you, oh my gosh, I think it was a month or so ago, maybe it was 2 months ago. We met in a networking group online, and I love your story. I love what you're doing. And I just want you to share with the audience what your journey was, what brought you from where you were to where you are today, and how you help women, and just take it away.
Thank you. Yeah. So for me, I knew early that I wanted to be a pharmacist. I love helping people. I love science. I was good at math. I found that this career would be very rewarding. Practiced as a pharmacist 20 plus years. And near the end, I was consuming more alcohol than I wanted. I was raising my daughter at the time, and we had discovered she had some unique needs, and I turned to my glass of Chardonnay at the end of the night to relax, unwind, wash away the stress, wash away the disappointment, wash away the fears, the anxiety. I would say I used it to relax, but I really think it was more to escape. And being a healthcare practitioner, I was afraid to tell anybody because my license could be pulled from me. It could be revoked. And I spent years getting and fine tuning that license. And I didn't feel comfortable even telling my primary care physician because I was afraid it would be in my medical record. And I knew those are searchable by employers. It's just, I was so afraid to talk about it. And I didn't know if I didn't feel like an alcoholic. I went to work. I was never late. I didn't want alcohol right out of bed. I was paying my bills. I was actually hugely successful in my company, owning my own company, running it. I didn't miss a beat in life, but I felt terrible about wanting it every single night and wanting that one glass that would turn into a bottle, and oftentimes more than a bottle. And just feeling like there has to be a way to cut back without giving it up, because where I was at, I couldn't imagine giving it up. And it didn't even sound like honestly, a lifestyle that was attractive to me. So I went online and tried to look at how to cut back on Chardonnay, how to cut back. And I found there was a life coach that helped women stop over drinking. And I said, that's exactly what I do. I overdrink. And because of my science-based brain, I looked at is this possible? Is it need to be abstinence? And what I found was a lot of research saying that you can rewire your brain for less desire. You can become someone who just has some, again, for most people. And so, and here's the thing, most people who overdrink are not at the end stage where we would call that severe alcohol use disorder, because that's the terminology they're using now. They're not using alcoholic because of the stigma associated with it. So I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want. When I went through the program and it worked, I was successful. It worked for me. I said, I want to do this for other women, because I can't imagine how many moms, working moms, professionals that think that this is a natural and normal thing to do at the end of the day, but deep down it doesn't serve you long term, and it starts to feel like it's a crutch and it's more than what you want. But yet you don't feel like AA or abstinence programs is quite where you're at. So I just love that this gray area drinking can be solved with the right tools, so you don't have to progress. So I talk about my space as being more prevention rather than treatment based.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's really interesting because it seems like, as I'm listening to you talk, and I was even thinking about this before we started the recording today, I was thinking about it this morning and looking at your website. And I think that a lot of times just society, or maybe it's the messages that we get, almost normalizing alcohol, especially wine, women and wine. We even have a group, Women, Wine and Wellness. And it's almost what started out to be a little bit like, kind of funny and cute, started to snowball out of control.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And what I find interesting is we glamorize it as a society. And then when you can't control it, it's demonized, right? Now you're like outcast, and you're full of shame. And, but we can talk about other conditions, disorders, things when they get out of control with compassion. But there seems to be this lack of compassion and lack of understanding how to bring it back in, reel it back in. All of a sudden your brain starts going to, oh my gosh, I'm going to be, alcoholic cirrhosis and lose my liver and, all the things. We go to that end stage. But I think a lot of people don't want to get to have a rock bottom, or don't want to have, the negative consequences keep coming. We want to get a handle on this much earlier. And there are tools and ways to do that, which is empowering, right? That's what your podcast is all about, is empowering yourself to make good decisions. And you're right. Like, I have some friends and some acquaintances who say, oh, I belong to a book club, but we don't even talk about the book. We go to have wine. Right. So it is, and it's all in the advertisements. If you see any cruise line or country club membership, it's always the older couple on the back of the boat having a glass of champagne together, or, just wine is upscale, and it's how we relax. It's how we vacation. It's how we enjoy ourselves. And when we keep getting that messaging, and we keep doing it, and if the brain takes over and keeps wanting to do it, right, and that desire becomes over desire, I think it really starts to question, like, oh my gosh, how can I cut back? Can I cut back? And how do I do that?
Well, I love what you're saying, because it's so true. The insidious onset, or the insidious, messages that we're getting. And it's like, okay, it's just one glass of wine. And then it's like every event that you go to, wine is served, and it does normalize it more and more. And then once you get to the point that it's either out of control, or you think it might be getting out of control, there's that stigma. It's like, here, relax with a glass of wine. And then all of a sudden you're bad for doing this.
Yes.
And then, like you said, with the advertisements that, with the magazines and the commercials and everything, have a glass of wine, have all these drinks. Oh, the sandals, the, vacations, all inclusive, you can drink to your heart's content. And I thought, who came up with that slogan? That just doesn't sound right. It just doesn't sound very good or very healthy. And then before you know it, it's like you're spinning out of control. But it's, like you said, the brain, even with those commercials, when we keep getting those messages, even if we're not paying attention, our brain is. It's like, oh, alcohol good. Alcohol, we need to relax. This will
Yes.
help us have a much better time. This will help us be more popular. This will help us get more clients. This will help us be the life of the party. It's just, you get all of those messages. And then, it's kind of like this incredible disconnect for your brain.
Yeah, because you're like, why am I justifying it so much?
Mm.
Like me, I have a hard day. I'm going through a difficult time. I had a long day. It's like whatever the brain can grasp onto, it starts to grasp onto, and it just starts making all these justifications to keep going. And then once you have one glass, it's like, well, why stop now? This feels so good. Let's keep going. Let's get this party started. Or you're at a networking event, and I have social anxiety. So it was just a way that I relaxed into my body and wouldn't feel so self-conscious, or what's going to come out of my mouth. Is it going to be stupid, or how do I break the ice, or how do I get involved, and how do I introduce myself without looking creepy, or, just all these things that we think about ourselves. So your brain starts to become, I say, dependent on it in certain situations, because it frees you up, or it limits your self-talk that might be negative. And so you can just ease and relax better.
Yeah, that negative self-talk is exactly where I was going, because we all have it, we all do it. And it's crazy, which is another reason why, I prefer doing networking that is in the morning or the middle of the day rather than in the evening, because, by that time I'm exhausted. And even though a glass of wine would sound really good, then I'm even more concerned of what will come out of my mouth. If, we remove the filter, you just kind of never know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
So
and here's another thing I hear from my clients a lot. It's like, oh, and now with the advent of Uber and Lyft, it even gives me more of an excuse not to have to watch myself, because, well, I know I don't have to drive. I can just call an Uber or Lyft. Or so it's interesting how, again, the brain just keeps looking and justifying that we could keep going with it.
and looking for reasons why we don't have to stop.
Yes, exactly right.
And that brings me to another subject, because, and I hate to keep bringing this up, but it's a well-known fact that we've all had a really tough year. And just the anxiety, the fear, the uncertainty of not knowing what was going to happen next, and not knowing if we would ever get out of the situation, being closed up in our homes for so long, and 24/7 with your spouse or your kids or whomever. Got to really, I'm sure that the alcohol industry did very, very well in 2020 and even going into 2021.
Absolutely. There's actually reports out there. I was just on another podcast where the Rand Corporation did a study, and they were saying, particularly for women, the increase in alcohol use, misuse, and abuse has really skyrocketed, because a lot of the burden fell on them with the kids and all kinds of things. And it's funny, even over the grocery store. Well, not funny, I say that tongue in cheek, but in September, one of the grocery stores, I posted this on my Facebook page, said, "Moms, get your school supplies here." And it was this sign over the wine aisle. So it is a way that we're coping with the stress, the fear, the uncertainty, the loneliness, the lack of connection, I don't know if I'm doing this right. There is a lot of fear. Absolutely. These aren't normal times.
No, and like you said, the lack of connection, because that's when we're seeing people face to face, especially, as women, that's how we communicate. That's how we thrive. And that's kind of like how we roll.
Definitely. It's a basic human need. It's a basic human need. It really is. Connection is a basic human need, especially for women. Men too, but more so for women.
I always go back to the human dignity. And it's almost like that is part of our human dignity, is our humanity and our ability to connect. And when that's taken away from us, I mean, where do you go?
Right. It's hard. It's a tough place. And then alcohol becomes even more attractive in that place, because the brain sees its relief. And that's where I help women with what they call their struggle, right? Over drinking was a struggle for me, is that we want to demonize the alcohol, but our brains only see alcohol as a solution. So demonizing the alcohol doesn't make you feel better, and it won't change your habit. It just won't. because your brain's going to be like, well, I'm calling it evil, or I'm calling it poison, or I'm calling it unhealthy, or I'm calling it whatever, but my brain still wants it. And you're actually making the brain want it more by putting it down, because you're putting shame on top of you for wanting it. This is what I find with a lot of women. This is what I found with myself. And of course, nobody wants to feel shame. So what do? You go escape from it with more alcohol.
But isn't that the truth, as far as even like overeating
Absolutely.
and other habits that are, really bad for you and bad for your health? But with overeating, a lot of times the shame, people can see
Yes.
your addiction. They can see
Right.
your problem. I don't want to say
Right.
addiction, but they see the shame, and that makes it even more difficult. And shame is something that is such a devastating emotion and feeling.
It is. And that's what I felt. I mean, here's the thing. I think I had so much pride. I didn't call it shame. I called it and just embarrassment, which I think is just another flavor of shame. I was just so embarrassed of the habit. And I thought, as a pharmacist, I shouldn't have this habit. Like, and if anybody knew, oh my gosh, I couldn't even comprehend that. So even going to a meeting and saying, hi, I'm Sherry and I'm an alcoholic, even though that label didn't feel right to me, I just couldn't even do that because I didn't want members around my community seeing me, right? And then all of a sudden seeing me in a white coat, working with medication, I felt trust would be gone, my reputation would be blown. And I think people with that professional image, particularly out in their community, whether it's, their realtors or even in the church or wherever they feel that they have this reputation, I think protecting that is important, and can be a barrier to actually getting the help you want.
Well, I think sometimes even with a professional person, there's even more pressure.
Yes,
More
right.
pressure just because, we all have a home life, you have your daughter, you've got your house, you're running the home, then you're going out and you have your own business, your own pharmacy business. And I mean, that's an awful lot of pressure. And then it's okay. So I have a couple of drinks at the end of the day. And now then that builds up the pressure even more. What if people find out about this? I can't go to an open meeting and say, hey, I think I have this problem, can't talk to anybody. And now you're kind of like going to different liquor stores too, because you don't want, anybody to see you at the same liquor store, every once a week or whatever.
Yeah, I grocery store hopped because I didn't want the cashier even on to my like, oh, there's that lady. Why doesn't she just buy 6 bottles of Chardonnay? Because I wouldn't trust myself being around it. If I brought more into the house, I was afraid I would consume more and more. So I thought the way to control it was by limiting how much I purchased each time. And I'm not saying that's not effective, but for me, it wasn't effective in changing the behavior long term.
So then when did you, how long have you been doing this work, this coaching work?
Yeah, I started my business in 2018. So it's about 3 years now.
Oh, wow. And do you still do pharmacy or did you leave the field?
I still have my license active, but I'm not practicing at the moment.
Do you miss it?
Yes, I do, but I really do. I know this sounds weird. I enjoy drugs tremendously.
Oh, that's just a great
not
answer.
to take them, but I enjoy understanding how they work on the body. I love educating people on how they work for them and the downsides and the upsides, and helping people navigate that decision, because it's not always an easy decision, particularly if it's for kids or elderly people. So I enjoy that part immensely, but I find that I get that satisfaction here in the coaching business because I feel I'm helping women tremendously break a bad habit that really changes and impacts their health, not just for themselves, but they're a critical family unit, right? A lot depends on the mom.
Right.
And so just cleaning this up is so much more than pills. Actually, I have a podcast on that called Better Than Pills, because I used to think drugs, pills are the answer. They lower heart attacks, they get rid of headaches, they do all these wonderful things. But wow, when you can really change your programming in your mind I think that is way better than being on a medication to help you do that. If you could do that without medication. Yeah.
Mhm. With all of the things that you're offering and you're providing women, all the benefit that you're bringing, you're also including their human dignity. We're going back to that again because human dignity is so important. And I think when someone gets stuck in that spiral, you lose your sense of self. You lose your sense of who you really are. And then again, that spiral starts going down even more.
Yeah. It's like it affects your self-image.
Mhm.
And it, I felt I couldn't trust myself around alcohol, any type. I mean, it started as wine, but then it was wine and cocktails. And just not, and just knowing that you're doing this to yourself, I felt completely powerless, but I knew I wasn't powerless. And that's what I help women discover is how to gain their control, gain their power back, and stay in that seat all the time around alcohol. I didn't want to change my friends. I didn't want to change if I could have it in the house or not long term, right? If I needed to do that short term, fine. And if I found that it really worked long term, maybe I would do it. But I found it really didn't matter if it was in my house or not. I'd seek a way to get it or whatever. But I wanted to be around alcohol and just not it affect me or have that pull on me. That's really what I desired. I wanted to go back to the old version of Sherry, who used to be able to be around it. It was just on the back burner. It wasn't mentally consuming my mind. I didn't have all this mental chatter around it. I wasn't berating myself or thinking about it, like berating myself at 6 a.m. when I woke up in the shower. Like, why did I do that again? I feel like foggy. Now I'm going to need more cups of coffee, right? All of that. I'd say my, uppers in the morning, and then I have my downers at night. And then at night, while you're consuming it, it didn't always feel good because you're like, oh, here I go again. I told myself I wasn't going to drink tonight, but yes, I'm already on glass number 2. And then it's like, well, might as well finish the bottle because that's just what you do. And you just give up on yourself. You feel defeated. And so you're right. You want to change that self-image, right? That self-concept, and find the tools that you can learn to be powerful because you are powerful.
And I love the name of your business, the Drink Less Lifestyle. So it's not giving it up completely. It's you're changing the relationship
Exactly.
and the narrative around that.
Right. Because I find alcohol is neutral. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be bad. We don't have to put all the glamorizing words that we do all the time. If we want to do it at parts in our life and that feels good to us and it doesn't feel like we're overdoing it, and how I define that is like you don't have negative consequences that come from it. The weight gain, feeling bad about yourself, the low self-esteem, gosh, it could be so many things. I remember my sleep, right? It helped me pass out, but then it wouldn't keep me sleeping. Like it would be the 3, 4 a.m. wake up. Oh my gosh. And, or even just nightmares sometimes, or weird dreams when you drank too much. And just not feeling like and the data shows it doesn't get you that deep restorative sleep. So even though you might have slept a long time, you didn't feel really rested when you got up. And then it affects your melatonin, it affects your estrogen levels. So there's just so much hormone disruption that comes from it, especially if you drink more, right? So just consuming it in a way that you don't feel like it's bad. Like I would like to have women develop peace around it. Most of the women that I work with, I'd say maybe 10% want to leave it behind completely. Like they're just over it and they just don't want to think about it anymore. They just want their desire completely changed for it. But the other 90% want to get to that place where I want a glass here and there. I want to be able to have one on my anniversary or on my birthday or out with a girlfriend, but I want my off button where I don't keep going, right? Like I learn how to say no and not desire more.
And you actually have, like I said at the beginning, a 12-week program, which is specifically for women. And so how does that work? If you can give us just a couple of bullet points, of what, if somebody, they can download it from your website.
So there's a freebie I offer, and it talks about 6 key steps to maintaining control, really.
Mhm.
It's called stop over drinking, but it's really
Mhm.
maintaining control. So doing and implementing these key 6 steps can certainly dramatically change your relationship with alcohol. But my 12-week program, we take the information, we go deeper.
Mhm.
And it's really tailored to finding out what it is that keeps you drinking
Mhm.
and solving for that root cause. So for some people, it could be disappointment in a certain area of their life. It could be stress from their job, and they just don't know how to do it. And they've tried the quote, air quotes, standard
Mhm.
ways, right? Meditation or yoga, and it just doesn't seem to work for them, right?
Mhm.
So it's identifying what will work so that alcohol becomes less important in their life. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so it could be emotional management tools I teach a lot on, because that's very relevant. A lot of us are very emotional, right? When
Mhm.
we drink to avoid the stress, we drink to
Mhm.
avoid the disappointment,
Mhm.
we drink to avoid our shame. So it's dealing with these emotions in a healthy way, and providing my clients tools to do that.
Mhm.
So
There's
that's a
one
big component.
there's one thing that I picked off of your website that you said that alcohol numbs not only our negative emotions, but our positive ones as well.
Yes, I think I might have heard that first from Brene Brown's work,
Mhm.
because she struggled with alcohol use as well. And it's so true. I would just remember feeling like it's Groundhog Day.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like, and probably this last year, right? A lot of us feel that way. It's like, here we go again.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
stuck in my house with these kids or with my husband, or just things aren't changing and I can't travel and it feels weird to be out and about. And am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right decisions? Like all of that. And so we drink to get rid of all that negative ick that we're feeling. But then we wonder why we're not feeling joy, why we're not feeling fulfilled. What is our purpose? Even though we might be in the right job at the right time for us, or even though we wouldn't, send back our kids or make a different marriage decision, right? Like we would still keep all of our life as is, but yet it still feels like not fulfilling and lackluster. And it's just nice on paper, but we're not experiencing the joy of it. And that's what I
Mhm.
felt. I tell this story a lot. I might have been on one of my episodes of my podcast, but when my daughter was about 4, she would come and kiss me on the cheek goodnight.
Mhm.
And I used to think, oh my gosh. And then she'd come back and kiss me again and come back and kiss me again. And I'm thinking, oh,
Oh.
this is just a delay tactic. And I was kind of mad, but it seriously, she just wanted to show her love. And I couldn't receive it because I was already 3 drinks in. And
Oh.
all I thought to myself is, would you just go to bed? I do not want more kisses. And I thought, wow, really? Like, is that shouldn't be a typical response. And I just wanted to get back to my wine because I just wanted my time. And
Mhm.
I didn't want her to also see it. I didn't want her to see that I was annoyed. Like, yeah, it's just, so the wine really robbed me of feeling that connection with her, from feeling that bond that she craved and that I craved. I just didn't recognize that craving because I had
Mhm.
a wine craving that kind of was more powerful in the moment at that time.
Well, I think there was another craving that you had that we all have, and that is my time. I want my time. I want my space. And so there are a lot of different ways where we can get that space. But that's part of it, I think, is just having this. You want to put this little bubble wrap around you, even if it's just for a little while, to make the world stop pushing back. Just, I want some time where I can just decompress. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yeah. And here's the thing I try to tell the women I work with. I want them to get that before 9 o'clock at night, right? Like, let's
Mhm.
carve out some time. Cause I think for women, we just give and give and give. And then we're so depleted that we turn to like alcohol to like give us
Yeah.
something like this relaxation, right? Even though we know it could be too much. But yes, we just need to fill ourselves up. And if we can do that earlier in the day, we also don't feel so depleted by the end of the night.
Yeah, really good point. I love going outside in the middle of the day and just I call it my backyard TV. We have a huge backyard and I have this little chair that I move all around the yard so I can get different views and stuff. And I just sit there in that little chair and just look around at the trees and, the leaves and the birds and, different sounds that I can hear in the neighborhood and everything. It's just so relaxing. And on the days that I can't do that, that it's either snowing too much or we've been getting a lot of rain lately, it's like, oh, I feel like a caged animal, especially after this past year.
Yes. Yeah. And here's what I find too is like a lot of women don't know what recharges them because they've been so disconnected from themselves.
Mm.
So they can feel overwhelming. Like, what does recharge you? That could feel like an overwhelming question for somebody who's been, for me, my drinking career, as I like to call it, was 10 plus years. so if you were to say, well, what does feel good for you? I wouldn't have an answer back in those times. It was only alcohol that made me feel good.
Mhm. Well, I think it's interesting that you say that what does recharge you, because I think a lot of times, especially again, as women, we're doers. And well, okay, what can I do to recharge myself instead of taking that time to be quiet, to have some, silence? I have to fill it with a yoga class. I have to fill it, I'll try Pilates, I'll do this. So it's, running around even more, which we end up then like the little hamster in the cage, just going on that wheel and not able to get off.
Oh my gosh, you brought up a great point because this is something I have to almost decondition out of the women is they're like, well, what else do I do if
Mhm.
I'm not drinking? And so a lot of women who've tried to cut back have tried this technique. I call it the distraction technique. I'm going to
Mhm.
distract my brain by doing
Mhm.
laundry at 5 o'clock or taking a spin class at 5 o'clock or doing yoga or something else that, in my witching hour, which is the hour I crave so much alcohol or to start drinking, I'm going to do something else. So they're trying to distract their brain. But the problem is you can't do that same activity every day at that time because the brain will become bored with it. It
Mhm.
won't feel as good as a glass of wine. I'll tell you that right now, because you won't get the same dopamine hit. So that switching one item and wanting to insert a different do item often doesn't lead to long-term success.
Interesting that you mentioned the dopamine hit too, because that's an important part of it, which I think is so fascinating because you are a pharmacist, is understanding, the neurological and the chemical imbalances and the chemical changes and everything that do happen in the brain. So it's basically with this 12-week program and the way you are working with women, you're using the neuroplasticity. So you're changing the neural pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And people who are listening to this are probably thinking, well, how does that happen? How long does it take? And, is it going to last? So just start explaining a little bit more about the neurological changes and the neuroscience behind the work that you do, because I think when people hear it and understand it, then it makes sense to them.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you what, when you are not in charge at all, so let's call it 0% in control, just getting to 5% control is the biggest hurdle.
Mm.
Now, this is something I love to keep explaining because so many of us want that 100%. And if we're not at the 100%, we give up. And ladies, listen, like it really is about that initial change is the hardest step.
Mhm.
And we got to keep going and embracing. Maybe the body stays there for a while, just like our bodies lose weight, right?
Mhm.
And then we plateau.
Mhm.
And then the body's ready to drop some weight. Like it's like resetting your set point. It's
Mhm.
the same way with alcohol use, right? It's just keep going, and using these different tools along the way so that you keep getting progress over time. And
Mhm.
what I find is most women make most of the progress in the first 4 weeks in my program
Mhm.
because they get the foundational tools and then we just keep tweaking them to keep getting further and further results. So your brain is talking to itself differently during this process, and it's building those pathways with each new thought, each new emotion, each new action that you take, and it just keeps building it. So I use the analogy in my program a lot. It's like you have to build a road. There's no
Mhm.
road there yet. right? First of all, we have to clear the weeds, clear the grass, move any big rocks, right? And then we got to get the construction crew to start, putting down the dirt, and then the concrete or the macadam or the asphalt, right? And then it just keeps going, and they keep going, and they don't give up, and they keep building that highway. That's the same way your brain works with new patterns, new behaviors.
That's awesome, because I just had a client this morning and I was explaining to her the same thing as far as trying to get more movement and trying to get into, more flexibility and into better shape and stuff. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's a process, and you kind of have to embrace that process and think of it almost like as a game. I use the analogy of building a house. You can't do all these exercises on a faulty foundation because it's just going to collapse.
Right.
So you've just got to get a strong foundation, and that takes time. But even just like you said, I love that first 5%, that is success.
It is.
And I think in our society, we are just so geared for instant gratification. It's like, okay, I took the steps, I did this, and I should be way at the top. And I should be done by now. And it doesn't happen overnight, but you've got to enjoy it and embrace it. And you have to celebrate every single little tiny step, every increment.
And Cheryl, you said it so beautifully, because this is what the research shows, is that when you do this process and you celebrate along the way and you can have fun with it, mind you, drinking less can be fun. I know that hurts people's brains to hear. It hurt my brain initially. I'm like, wait, I'm still going to love my life. And then you're going to love your life even more. Right. And to celebrate that and to own that is a beautiful thing. And it also makes those highways connect quicker and faster. It lays the framework down much sooner. So I always encourage, and we're always celebrating wins, and we're always feeling good along this journey, because that's what's going to lead to lasting change.
So those highways just interconnect and merge and yield and stuff, and they don't have those big old potholes in them, right?
Exactly. And the brain does prune. I just did a podcast on that. It prunes away what we no longer use, just like the rest of our body. It prunes away cells that are no longer useful, right? So that's what it does mostly at night. It's cleaning up the system. It's cleaning out. The liver detoxifies and cleans out. The kidneys excrete. The bowels excrete, right? The brain goes through the same thing. If it's not needed, it prunes it away, and it eliminates it. So these old thought patterns eventually, go by the wayside, and where you don't think about alcohol. Like, I used to obsess about alcohol. At 3:00, I'd already start thinking, okay, what grocery store am I going to get it from today? Or is this a Postmates delivery? Like, am I going to pay the premium and just have somebody drop it at my house because I'm too embarrassed to walk in the store, right? Like, so this was the discussion already at 3 p.m., planning for my 5:00, 6:00 witching hour. It just occupied so much mental energy. I don't have any of that talk anymore around alcohol. It's something that I could be around. I don't have the pull, the draw. I could say no, and I feel like the night is just as great as if I said yes.
And how long has it been then for you?
Yeah, 2017, I went through my journey.
Okay.
Last.
So I'm kind of thinking maybe that the people who you didn't want to know about your drinking history and your drinking, well, obviously now they probably do, because that you have this beautiful website, you've got this incredible business. Do you get any either negative or positive feedback, or do people just not even touch it, or what?
For a little bit there, I think my friends were like, oh, so who are you now? But they've embraced me. And then I do have some colleagues, right, who are like, oh, I don't know if I should be liking her page or commenting, because that might mean I somehow cannot control my alcohol. So everybody takes to it differently. Of course, I have people that don't like my message because they think abstinence has to be the only way for everybody. So I do get a lot of people that tell me their views and what they've been through. And, I sympathize and I empathize. Some people have really horrific stories around alcohol. It's, broken marriages, broken families, taken away jobs because of DUIs, and that's on their record, and they can't get employment. So I get it that we all experience alcohol differently. But I really think being proactive about it rather than reactive is just better strategy for your health, your life, and wellness. So I do get all kinds of people commenting and rightfully so. I mean, I just understand we've all experienced life and alcohol differently.
Well, we're all individuals, like you said. We're not robots. What works for one person does not work for another. We all have our own histories, our own biology. We all have our own choices to make and our own decisions to make. So, okay, so where can people find you?
Yeah, the best place would be to go to my website, sherryprice.com. So Sherry is spelled just like the red wine. My dad was in bartending school when I was born. So it's SHERRY price.com. And I love the website because you can find the rest of the links there. Plus, I have free resources on there. I have things that are scientifically backed there. Like people may not know alcohol use, abuse, what is considered a moderate drinker, binge drinker. So all that is linked on my resources page. So you can find out all that information, plus the free download about the 6 steps to stop over drinking and really gain control. I'm also on Instagram, and my handle is at Dr. Sherry Price. And then Facebook, I have a couple of pages. The first is just my general page, which is Sherry Price Coaching. And not many people commented when I had just a general page because it's about alcohol, and we know Facebook can, on a public domain, right, can see things. So I created a private page, and that's called Stop the Overdrinking Habit. That's also on my website to get to the link to find it, or you can just Google it on Facebook as well or search for it.
And it is a great website. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
So do you have any final thoughts or pearls of wisdom that you want to drop on our audience? Any take-home points that they can give them? You've given us a lot to think about.
Yeah. And I want to leave your audience with really just, if you were to be curious about why you have the habit, that's going to start to drop some of the shame. And I think we get really stuck in shame and fear. Like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if this will work. Oh, I don't know. I tried this so many other times, you know, and that is disempowering. And, you know, you and I are all about empowering women, right? And taking back your control. And you have that authority right now. You have it in you. And connecting with that and staying connected can be so powerful, just not in the drinking journey, but really in every area of your life. And sometimes I know for me, it took learning the tools, and it also took having somebody else believe in me because I'd given up so much on myself so many times, trying and starting over. Sober Octobers, dry Januaries, like cleanses, detoxes, whole 30s. Like I did all those things for 30 days without any alcohol. But man, the day those ended, I was back to my fridge going, oh, I missed you, alcohol. So I just really needed somebody to walk with me on this path, show me how they've been able to do it, and really just provide that level of support, because I oftentimes just caved on myself too much and then felt worse. So there are resources out there, ladies. I'm not the only one, but if this message resonates with you, I do offer free consults to talk with you to help you find your way, because this could be overcome. For sure. It's a problem that can be solved. It's not a label that you have to wear for life.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for being on the show today, Sherry. I really appreciate you. And I'm so glad I had the opportunity to meet you, and just really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you as well. And do remember to beware of that witching hour, because we've all got it in one way, shape, or form. Find a way that you can reinforce those pathways and find your way to health and wellness and control of your own life. And you might want to give Sherry a call. Check out her website, because she's got some fantastic information on it. And that is the way of the Femininja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the Femininja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.